Hey there, Royal Guard. You're about to get one heck of a performance review. I'm Anthony.
I'm Damon.
I'm David.
And I'm Katie.
Welcome to issue number 165 of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club podcast. Each and every week we meet here to talk about comic books. On this particular show, there will be no club discussion on some of the picks that we've been talking about. So to give a quick preview of the upcoming club discussion, in the coming weeks we'll have Inkblot issue number 5, Crossover issue number 3, and Batman The Adventures Continue issue number 8. But on this particular show, we are going to jump into the weekly reviews, which we go all around the internet, talk about the books that we've been reading, both new and old. And in this one, we have a letters page in which we ask a question is asked upon us, and everyone at home can answer too. If you had to host a dinner party for 3 fictional characters as guests, who would you invite? So you can think about that. We will cover that later in the show. Then we have a news segment, which is going to be part 2 of our previews preview. We're going to dive into the giant previews catalog with the independent publishers and the merchandise and the apparel and collectibles and all that stuff. Listen back to last week's episode for some picks on Marvel and DC. And these will be for products coming out in March 2021 and beyond. And then we have, before we can close up the show, we have to open up a pocket dimension, which is our show and tell segment. We will do that at the end of the show, close that up, make sure none of this stuff gets out, and then close up the show as well. So that is what is in store for this week. All right. I'm going to kick it off here with something I was very excited to get a Kickstarter reward in the mail of a physical edition of Insider Art. This here is a compendium of comics, crafts, and cats, over 250 pages for all ages. Where were you in March 2020? Assembled in under 3 months during a global pandemic, Insider Art is a who's who of female, non-binary, and marginalized comic book artists, writers, pencilers, inkers, colorists, letters, and editors. Originally crafted to raise money for female and non-binary retailers who were hit hard by the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, Insider Art is proof of what fearless, like-minded, and empowered humans can achieve when they unite for the greater good. Insider Art is more than a celebration of storytelling as an art form. It's a tribute to the art of collaboration and community. With hearts and comics, maybe with love and comics, there's a heart emoji there. And 150 creatives from around the world and into your home. Last week I talked about Hey Amateur, the a very similar type of collection of comics. That was edited by Shelley Bond, who is a legendary editor in the comic business. Well, she also edited this. So I had 2 of these things that showed up almost back-to-back weeks. So it works good for the podcast here. This is something that there was a digital version first. So I think it was late spring, early summer. I had backed the digital version of this. And then towards the end of summer, then they opened up a Kickstarter to help fund to do print runs of it. Because that was the one thing being like, I knew I was getting a digital copy, but I'm like, oh, it'd be awesome to get a physical copy of it. And then they went ahead and successfully presented that as well. Much like the premise says, this is a great celebration of just what it takes when you take a bunch of creators, of storytellers in this medium, and in such a short amount of time to come up with 250 plus pages of stories. What's cool about the structure of this book that kind of sets it apart from any other kind of compendium or anthology is that it all, since the idea of a pandemic and being on lockdown and being quarantined, that is what this book is modeled after. Each chapter or section of this book is divided out to sections of the house. So they had a different editor for each section of the house. So you've got, the bathroom, you've got the basement, the attic, the kitchen, the bedroom, the craft room, the garage, living room, if I didn't say that one. There's a bunch of stuff in there that these people told stories that are related to those sections of the house. So there are some basement stories in here and attic stories, I guess, that lend to maybe some creepy horror elements. Some of these stories are, reflecting about what to do in lockdown and things like that. It's not all about that. So there are definitely other ones that just kind of take, like there's a basement one that's about D&D. So while they all, I don't know if any of these kids are, they all look like, they're friends and stuff. So this one ain't existing in a, COVID-19 world, so to speak, but it is taking advantage of the basement element. And there's a story about this girl. They're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and they keep joking about being like, all right, the dungeon master is going through and is setting up the scenario, and then one of the players has an option to do something, and she just goes, I want to kiss it, being like, what? Every time you come up across something in Dungeons and Dragons, you don't fight it or do this. I haven't played D&D, so I'm only gonna throw in some minor examples. All these different things you could do. They're like, how come your option is always to kiss something? And then she's like, well, that's what I want to do. This is what D&D is all about. And she, throughout this couple page story, basically inspires everybody about how she approaches the game and how they all decide like, oh yeah, okay, yep, I'm gonna kiss too. Yep, okay, I'm gonna kiss the character too. And so it's kind of funny, and just like that story, kind of kicks it off. Some of these are one pagers, some of them are multi pages, some of them are almost like little essays or little storybook chapters. So the idea of the medium kind of changes as you go out. Based on my, I'll just kind of show some examples of some artwork here. But I like the idea of the sections of the house and everything. And there's little bios on the creators as well. And then at the very end, I think it's like beneath the floorboards or something, I think is like a behind the scenes where you just get to see a little more about how they approach the project, and we're given the deadline, a very short deadline to crank out these stories and stuff. But there's just a lot of different things, and I'm glad I opened to that one because I didn't have it bookmarked. So this book spawned something that I got to buy in addition to this. So there's a craft section in here, and there's one by Shelley Bond, and goes, how to make a teddy bear. And she's got this whole thing, and it's done through through pictures and stuff, but there's some diagrams and art and stuff like that. And it's just basically I think it's a 2-page thing, just explaining like, oh, here's what you need, things around the house, and you can make your own little teddy bears. I'm not very crafty when it comes to like sewing machines and stuff like that. I definitely was the person that either had my mom or my friends, sew things for me for school, and then I turned it in. That's kind of where I sit with those kind of skills. So thankfully, Shelley Bond, through her Etsy shop, she's been selling some of these made to order. These are little bear cubs that are presented in these this French fry container for some reason. It's just something cool that she kind of made, and she just made them to order and sent them off, and sent me some cool stuff along with it and everything. And this is something that was spawned out of this insider art, this little activity and stuff. So yeah, this is almost maybe a tease of the pocket dimension, if you will, because it kind of goes back and forth. But yep. So this is some insider art right here coming from.
I've also been inspired to make something. That book inspired me to make a new role-playing game where instead of fighting the monsters, you can choose to kiss them. It's called Ogres and Orgies, and you try to get
O&O, play a little O&O. That should be cut out of the podcast because it is a good idea. That I'm guessing there's a demographic and definitely a market for that. If it's not already. Yep. So play a little O&O.
Yep, the entire party is going to be made up of bards.
Look at that. Art inspiring other art. That's what it's all about. But yeah, this is just a cool collection. It just kind of shows what creatives can do when they're basically locked down and they need to, need to push out a story and some art and stay busy and stay focused and pretty much ignore everything that's going on outside of the house because everything else was on fire. So here we go. Insider art. I'm sure you could probably go ahead and if you search that, there's ways of. I'm sure there's probably ways of getting this, but definitely the digital edition as well. So, all right. So, yep, that is that. We will jump over to David for your first item there.
All right. Well, all of my items today are continuing on with my reading of the Amalgam Universe books. So I'm going to kick it off with the first book that I read this week, which was Spider-Boy. And I don't know if anybody can tell which characters, they merged together to make Spider-Boy. But I'll give you a hint. It's Spider-Man and Superboy. During this time, this is kind of coming off of the Clone Saga for the Spider-Man stuff, or during that time, and then Superboy in DC having been a clone made up of Superman with the human DNA from Lex Luthor, which they revealed later, and even that's kind of hinted at in here a little bit too, with Spider-Boy, where he's a clone and they don't know who the human donor was. Like the other Amalgam stuff, there's only one issue, but it's set up as though, in this case, it was set up as though it was the first of a new series of a character that had been around for years and years and years. And I don't think I've mentioned it with the other ones. They even have like these letters pages where they have these supposed readers that write in and talk about the stories, in this case, because it's supposed to be a first issue, they talk about their excitement for this character that they've loved for years. So this takes place at the location of the Cadmus Project, where Spider-Boy was created, and he was done so because in the Amalgam universe, instead of Superman or Super Soldier, you have them merged together and you have Super Soldier, which was this character that I will go into a little bit further on later, during the World War II era that was created. And trying to duplicate that Super Soldier thing, they used some other stuff. It doesn't really explain how the spider got involved, but they end up creating Spider-Boy in this project. You also have some other characters that are referenced, kind of a mix between the Fantastic Four and the Challengers of the Unknown, which is the Challengers of the Fantastic. So all the characters, essentially the Fantastic Four characters are in here. Reed Richards, Ben Grimm, Johnny Storm, Sue Storm, and they all kind of make appearances in here. Sue is actually an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. So then they have the villain of this particular issue is Bizarnage, who of course is a cross between Carnage and Bizarro. And Bizarnage is trying to take over, find a new human host. First he goes after Reed Richards because he wants to bond with him. And then Spider-Boy kind of lures him away from him by saying, hey, I won't fight back. You can have me. And tricking him into imprisonment. But they do mention, other characters throughout this, some of the other projects that they've had. There are characters who you're not quite sure who the villain. It's hinted at that there's some treacherous stuff going on here. And it's suspected that this doctor here is behind it. And then it's revealed through thought that it's actually Reed Richards who's behind it, that he's turned evil and he has this plan. And then, of course, it's revealed afterwards that it is, in fact, this guy. I can't think of whose name it was, sorry, who's behind it, who has been like basically slipping some evil DNA into Reed Richards to make him go bad. So they fight through here. You find out that one of the people who work for the Cadmus Project is Dr. Octopus, but I should give you a little bit more information on Spider-Boy himself, who's going by the name Pete Ross. That, of course, is the name of a Superman character, one of his supporting characters. But the name comes from Peter Parker, who is mentioned in here as being a scientist who devises this research, but is apparently killed off during what might have been an act of sabotage. So he's raised by the person in charge of this project, General Ross, or Uncle Jen. So he takes on that last name, becoming Pete
That's good.
Ross. Yeah. So yeah, raised by his Uncle Jen.
And before I lose the joke and we get too far off of it, but we were talking about like Peter Parker and you got Spider Boy and all this kind of stuff. Did they miss an opportunity to have Spider-Man and the Atom, Peter Parker and Ray Palmer, so they could have Peter Palmer?
They did miss that, and I was looking for it because Ray Palmer is actually in this book, as is Hank Pym.
So for those and
it kind of talks about how their Hank Pym has given up on shrinking stuff, and now he's in his I want to make everything giant phase, whereas Ray Palmer is shrinking stuff down. So that's mentioned. They're both part of this Project Cadmus thing. And when I saw that in there, I'm like, they're going to call somebody Peter Palmer, and they didn't do it. It doesn't happen. So that was disappointing. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because as I read this, as soon as I saw, Ray Palmer in here, I'm like, that's it. There's going to be a Peter Palmer. And no, it didn't happen.
And for those that don't know what that is, I'd actually just told somebody that yesterday, just in a completely separate thing, because and I had mentioned how because I was talking about how in the first Ninja Turtles comics they kept spelling Michelangelo incorrect just so many times, like they didn't even do it right the first time out of the gate, and they talk about that in the book in the afterword and stuff. So I had mentioned the Peter Palmer thing. So early on in the Spider-Man comics, there's a panel here that goes, we know him as Peter Palmer, but the world knows him as Spider-Man. So this was a thing that actually happened. It was printed as Peter Palmer because the character's so new, Stan's, doing a million things, and editors and writers and artists are just so much going on that, no one fact checked the fact that the character is called Peter Parker, not Peter Palmer, probably not knowing this character is gonna, we're still gonna be talking about it 60 years later. But yeah, so that Ray Palmer, Peter Parker things looks like we got a pitch to make to Jim Lee or somebody. So
now, hopefully I remember, because in one of the other books that I'm going to talk about, there was, and it's somewhat related to Spider-Man, but there is a name screw up where somebody is called the wrong name in one of the other books. So that was kind of interesting that I was looking for it here. And then in the next book that I read, they actually do a screw up in editing where they write in the wrong name for somebody, and it happens to be a Spider-Man related character who's in a book that's not actually a Spider-Man related book, but it just happened to be the next thing that I read. So in the Pete Ross alter ego, Pete Ross does work for the Daily Bugle, which is it's more of a tabloid thing. It's not so much, I want pictures of Spider-Boy or whatever, as they do these tabloid stories on it, and they always have some wild thing. Like the most current one is, something like Spider-Boy weds the insect queen. And so that's mentioned a couple of times in here. You do have Doc Ock trying to set Spider-Boy up on a blind date with his niece, who isn't named. But then at the end, you have Doc Ock introducing Spider-Boy Don't know if this is actually his niece or not, but he then does, in fact, introduce him to the insect queen. And hopefully you can see this good enough to read it.
Yeah.
And that is the last page reveal. So including the you just hit the jackpot line, which they had to carry.
Classic.
It's to be continued, but of course we know that we're not going to ever see what happens. And that's kind of the disappointing thing, because all of these books, you know, they go through and they get you to a point where you do want to see what happens next. You got enough that you understand that this is a one shot, and there's a beginning, middle, end to the story itself within the book. But because it's supposed to, it's pretending that it's an ongoing series, you get that where it's like leading into other things. But and you're like, yeah, I actually want to know what happens. You know, what kind of shenanigans does Spider-Boy get into with the Insect Queen?
These are all 90s comics, I assume?
Yeah, this is 96. And I think
they
it went into 97 as well. There's some stuff that carries.
wonder if they're waiting for some big anniversary and then they can do number 2 issues of all these books.
I think that would actually be great if something happened where they were able to revisit this universe and you get a little bit more of that. Some of the characters, I think you get a little extra just because they did more than one book. There's not only Super Soldier, but there's another book, and I'm trying to think the title of it, and I haven't read it yet. It is in my to-read stuff, but it's another book with Super Soldier in it. I read JLX. Well, there's also some other related books to some of those characters and whatever. So some of these you'll get a little bit more. And some of these books do mention some of the other characters from the other books just to kind of tie them together a little bit. But they're a lot of fun. Half the fun is, of course, going through and trying to figure out, all right, who's this person and who are they made up of? And it is kind of hard to tell sometimes, at least at first. And then you realize, oh, this is this person, and sometimes you figure there's actually a third kind of thrown in. And so they're not always as easy to figure out as possible. But at least you were able to determine, you know, Spider-Boy is Spider-Man, or probably more accurately, the cloned version of Spider-Man, and Superboy, the Connor Kent clone version. So, but that is Spider-Boy from Amalgam. And I really actually, I've gotten out of the habit of saying the creative team on these, and I should actually point that out because these books are done by DC and Marvel working together. So you get some of these names that are like, you might know them from DC and you might know them from Marvel. Some of them worked for both companies, but at this time, you know, they might have been exclusively a Marvel company, and here they are working on something with DC people, or vice versa. So this one was written and co-inked by Carl Kessel. Penciler was Mike, trying to read the name there, it's a little blurred. Wieringo? I'm not even familiar with that name.
We're Ringo.
Wieringo. Gary Martin was the co-inker. Joe Rosas, colorist. Bill Oakley, letterer. Glenn Greenberg is an assistant. Tom Brevert, editor. Bob Harris, chief. So you'd have to really go back to like 96, 97 to think, okay, what were these people working on at that time, and figure out, was this primarily a Marvel staff, or was this primarily a DC staff? Because I think some of the books weren't co-done. I think some of them were like, okay, the Marvel guys got to do this book and the DC guys got to do this book, whereas I think some of the others had a little bit more, a little teamwork between the two. So, but yeah, another fun read.
Cool. All right, let's jump over to Katie for the next one.
All right. Hello, everyone. So, I asked my mom, what books should I talk about today? And she's like, I don't know, talk about some Hobbit books? And I'm like, okay, I'll talk about some Hobbit books. Today I am bringing a graphic novel adaptation of The Hobbit. I have three different versions of this story. It is illustrated by David Wenzel, adapted by Charles Dickens, and originally written by J.R.R. Tolkien. As longtime listeners will know, I am a huge Tolkien fan. My favorite thing on earth. If they made as many Tolkien comics as they made Star Wars comics, I'd talk about it every single week. So The Hobbit's been around for a while, but the story is Bilbo Baggins is a hobbit and he lives a pretty quiet life and he thinks he's happy with that. And then one day, the wizard Gandalf shows up and says, "You have been resting on your laurels for too long. I am going to put you on this adventure because I think it would do you some good." And Bilbo ends up going on an adventure with dwarves who are trying to retake their homeland far away in the mountain Erebor that had been previously taken over by the dragon Smaug. And along the story, Bilbo, of course, goes with the dwarves because it is a story. Along the story, he encounters the Elven King, he encounters Gollum, and he finally encounters Smaug himself. And you should read the story if you would like to find out how it ends. So something cool about these adaptations is they're done in like a pen and ink and watercolor style, so they look really good. The benefit of reading the graphic novel is you get images and pictures to go with it. And I think in Tolkien's work that helps a lot because it's so richly described. And also, there's a lot of weird names and new names that is hard to keep track of in your head. So having visuals to go with that really, really helps. And I have to say, I never get tired of seeing artists' interpretations of Smaug sitting on his big pile of money, just this giant, unfathomably big red dragon laying around on a pile of gold, and this tiny 3'6" little person talking to him. I love seeing the artist's interpretation of Gollum. Of course, Gollum to me will always be played by Andy Serkis, but I adore this version too. Something cool is some of the moments that were cut from the theatrical version of the movie, you get to see represented here in the book. So that's really nice. There's some extra stuff with the Elven King, who fans of the larger Imperium knows named Thranduil, but in the book he's only just called the Elven King. So that's really cool. A nice thing is that this eliminates a lot of the downtime. I know one of the complaints about Tolkien's world and the Lord of the Rings is it's a lot of people sitting around and talking for hours at a time, and then they go on walking adventures for months at a time. You're right, both of those things are actually true, and I think in modern storytelling would really drag down the book. But being a graphic novel, this can just show you, hey, they are walking, and you can assume that that's been going on. I love this because it appears to hit all the highlights of the story. So all those iconic vignettes are represented in here. We get to see Bilbo fighting the spiders. The dwarves look a lot like the classic style of European fantasy dwarves that we're used to seeing. They honestly remind me more of like Snow White than what we've seen more recently in the Hobbit movies. And the text is pretty faithful. So, of course, it opens with, "In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit, not a nasty, dirty hole, nor yet dry, bare sand hole. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort." And it does put you right in that comfort and then very quickly takes you out of it. If you are someone who's never read the story and really enjoys the visual medium, I think this is a great way to do it. It's gorgeous. I love it. Fantastic. If you are a big fan of the story and will just buy anything with the word Hobbit on it, go get it. And I love it so much. I accidentally bought 3 different versions of it. All I can say is I wish they'd make more. I would go out and buy 3 different versions of probably anything they've made. But yeah, that's my very glowing review of The Hobbit, adapted by Charles Dickens, illustrated by David Wenzel. Great job, David. And of course, written by J.R.R. Tolkien.
Now, do they have a lot of the songs? Because The Hobbit, as opposed to the Lord of the Rings book, was written almost a little bit more like the kids' book, kind of in a way. It had these songs.
Yep, absolutely.
Do they carry those over in the graphic novel version.
Oh. Let us take a look. I don't see a ton referenced in here. So I take that back. They do sing a little bit of the Misty Mountain song. So there's a little bit in here. I would say that is one thing it seems like they have left out, but you get enough of it to know that music is important to these people. So, because yeah, you actually point out a really cool detail that in terms of building a mythology, were you creating that song and storytelling and that mode of transmission would be highly important to the people. So, yep, there's a little bit.
Yeah.
Good question.
Well, cool. All right. The issue I'm bringing up to the table here is a MODOK Head Games issue number 2. Once an average technician for advanced idea mechanics, aka AIM, and an organization of brilliant and morally questionable scientists dedicated to amassing, I had to get better lighting here, a power via technological means. George Tarleton ascended beyond puny human limitations on his intellect thanks to a series of horrific experiments on him via the cosmic cube. The process not only mutated him into a massive-headed being, but also granted him superhuman intelligence and incredible psionic powers and drove him mad in the process. Now George has assumed control of AIM under his new identity, MODOK. This here is written by Jordan Bloom and Pat Oswalt, art by Scott Hepburn, colors by Carlos Lopez, and letters by Travis Lanham. This is soon going to be a Hulu original show through Marvel, which Pat Oswalt is a not only voicing and playing MODOK, but also show running the show. So this is I want to say maybe like a 3 or 4 issue series. They're up to 2 issues so far. I'm mostly going to be talking about issue 1 since the second issue is out, so it's kind of more so going into deeper spoilers for the first issue. So MODOK is this character. Now the abbreviation has changed multiple times, and maybe David could help with some of this too. Surprisingly, I don't think it even says in here, but he's a mechanical organism designed only for killing, and then there's different versions of that if you just swap, find synonyms of some of those words. I think it's kind of varied throughout.
Yeah, well, same thing with like shield. Shield has changed what it actually stands for too. But I don't recall all of them. But yeah, that sounds about right. Is what you got off there is what it typically will stand for, or something.
So this
like
book, this one lines up perfectly with what I'm going to talk about next with the vision in my next round. But it is opens up with a pretty crazy mission of MODOK, and here's a good look of what this guy looks like. This mechanical, just giant head with a robot mechanical spider-like, body when it comes to moving around and stuff.
And a jet butt that he rides around on.
Yes. And can't forget the jet butt. The Jet Butt Club. Remember that for the title. That might be it. They're in a mission with AIM, and they're trying to steal a bunch of stuff from Stark Unlimited. And while during the mission, MODOK starts to malfunction, and he basically screws up the mission. And they kind of talk about it, and they kind of almost kick him out of AIM. And they have this, he was like working as a leader of AIM, I think, at this time. But basically, everyone voted him out and said, "Nope, you're not good to the team." And he kind of has this moment where he's kind of recalling his life, but all of a sudden these memories pop up that he's not familiar with. So all of a sudden he's having memories that he has a family, as you can see, a daughter that very much looks like he would be the father of, and some very
I don't see the resemblance.
Yeah, and some very human-looking people as well in the family. But he has no memory of these flashes that he's kind of getting through his memory banks there, and that kind of goes in and out. And while he's being kicked out of AIM, it's basically they all jump on him at once, and he just kind of goes off, and it's him against everybody in AIM. There's an awesome splash page there, just kind of showing MODOK in action, and he goes to this lower part of. He shoots down, probably with his jet butt, just a reverse jet butt, shoots down into the bottom of AIM into this area where they kind of have all these stolen superhero goodies here, and he busts out as he jumps up to fight them all. So he's wearing a giant Ant-Man helmet, which is funny because giant man, Ant-Man, it's big. It's normal size for him because he's a big head, but you know what I mean. He's got a cap shield. He's got some sort of laser sword. What's cool is that my buddy here, there's a version of Herbie the Robot that's down here as well. All of this stuff, he basically armed to the teeth with all these superhero things. There's a bunch of Deadpool looking things. It honestly looks like it's like a string of Deadpool beach balls or something. I'm not sure what this is, but it's basically what it looks like. But he uses all of these weapons to fight against AIM and eventually break through. But as this first issue concludes, he kind of shoots off as he's escaping from AIM after kind of blowing up some of the headquarters, and he has a new mission where he wants to invent explosive resistant polymer to reinforce AIM mountain walls. So basically he just blew up the walls. So his first thing on the mission is to eventually repair those walls. So he's still loyal to AIM. And then his number 2 step is, violently murder all hostile coworkers and restore self to controlling power at AIM. And while he has these 2 tasks, he shows up on the front step of none other than Tony Stark as he asks him for help. So the guy that this issue started off with the mission of MODOK wanting to steal stuff from Stark Industries, or Stark Unlimited rather, and it ends with him needing Tony's help, and that is what issue number 2 is about. It's a very comedic book, very action-packed, very crazy, random. They give you a decent amount of backstory if you've never heard of MODOK before. Check out a trailer for MODOK upcoming on Hulu. It kind of has a robot chicken type of vibe to it, but a show where it's just that, and it just looks like good Marvel comedy fun. And Patton Oswalt, showrunner and star of that, and a co-writer of this, so that kind of helped sell this book. I have a MODOK mug that I should really show off, so I'll be right back. It's only going to be a couple seconds. You might be able to hear me. If you're not, I don't know, but it's something to eliminate dead air. But here's a MODOK mug, everybody. What's so great about the MODOK mug is that it's basically didn't change shape. It's his body. They just put a handle on the back so you can, drink your hot cocoa out of it. So
that's cool.
Yeah, MODOK is a very interesting character, and I'm very excited to get his own show coming up here.
Mug of drink of cocoa with a K.
Yes. Oh yeah, mug only designed for or orally drinking cocoa. Wait. Yeah. I think that's enough out of that. MODOK had games, hilarious, funny, and I think it's maybe going to be 3-4 issues max. I think so. All right. Then next up, we're going to jump back over to David.
Well, then I guess what I have next would be Speed Demon. I got to work on my lighting here so I can get less glare when I show off comic book covers. Okay, so I didn't initially even see this, figure out everything that was going on here. I didn't pay that much attention. I saw flaming head, skull, and whatever, and I'm thinking Flash Ghost Rider type thing, which was kind of true, but didn't get to that right away. Not realizing that that head, if you kind of look a little bit closer, you see some little ears and horns on it, and it's actually somewhat reminiscent of Etrigan, the demon from DC. And you find that this is actually kind of a cross between those three characters. It's like Ghost Rider, the Johnny Blaze version, the Barry Allen version of Flash, and Etrigan the Demon, which actually find out later that it's really a mix of four people, because in this version, Etrigan the Demon was once a human named Jay Garrick. So they're actually merging Johnny Blaze, Barry Allen, Jay Garrick, Etrigan. Did I miss somebody? Well, and whatever demon Johnny Blaze was merged with to make Ghost Rider. So they're mixing this all up and getting Speed Demon. Now, Speed Demon is going around and just like kind of Ghost Rider type would, hunting down murderers and stuff like that. You're introduced to some other characters. You get Hal Jordan in here from the Starbrand Corps rather than the Green Lantern Corps. And they merge the Guardians of the Universe with not the Guardians of the Galaxy, but with the Watchers. And so you get this big blue-headed version guy. So who incidentally is trying to kill Hal Jordan. And then the Speed Demon joins in and ends up killing them both. Because why not? Apparently, they're both not good. You get some background on Speed Demon and find that he was this human named Blaze Allen, who kind of was had to do with the circus. He's hanging out with the circus, but he kind of dabbled in some occult stuff and whatever, and had some abilities. But this character called Night Spectre, and I'm not really sure what the mix up here is. The Spectre part of it's obvious, especially from the appearance. He looks very much like the Spectre, so I don't know what he was actually been mixed with. Probably a character, maybe some sort of Ghost Rider character or something, but I haven't read a lot of that stuff, so I'm not totally sure. But the Night Spectre is trying to collect these certain souls that are these powerful souls, and collect them all. Basically, if you get a complete collection, you can like rule heaven, hell, and earth. So collect them all. And it turns out that Blaze Allen is marrying the love of his life, Iris. And so on their wedding, she is killed and her soul is like stolen from her. And so Blaze Allen basically makes a deal to bond himself with this demon Etrigan to go out and stop this other being, the Night Spectre, from getting all these souls, and therefore like destroying humanity and ruling heaven, hell, and earth, and yada yada. Blaze Allen also has a nephew by the name of Wally. So we throw some Wally West into it, although he shares the last name, so he's Wally Allen. And he's involved. And the whole time I was reading this book, I'm thinking, okay, somehow they're going to use Wally, and he's going to become like the new version of Speed Demon. And I wasn't necessarily wrong, because towards the end of it, he himself, in order to save his uncle, makes a deal with the same person that you find out is Merlin, makes a deal with Merlin to bond himself to a demon, although you don't know which demon. And he becomes much more of a Ghost Rider character, if I can get this in there, complete with the motorcycle. So it's almost like the Danny Ketch version of Ghost Rider, along with the Johnny Blaze version. So we'll just keep throwing more and more characters in here. You can also, when they're at the circus, start going through and picking out all these different people that are involved in the circus, including it's like Miss Miracle, I think is the name, who is a mashup of Mr. Miracle and Crystal from the Inhumans. We have the Blob, who is a mix of the Blob and Wally West Flash had a supporting character called Chunk, who's a big guy, and they kind of merged those characters together. So one of the people that they're going after is the Green Goblin. They didn't change the name; it's the Green Goblin. But the name of the person under the mask of the Green Goblin is Harvey Osborn. Harvey Osborn, and when he takes the mask off, you realize that it's a mix of actually Harvey Dent and Norman Osborn.
Still has the Osborn hair there, I see.
Yes, does have the Osborn hair. And that brings me to the earlier mentioned screw up. In the story, they screw up, and there's a part where they accidentally call him Norman. And it has nothing to do with the story. He's not Norman or whatever. They screw up. They call him Norman when his name in this is actually Harvey Osborn. So that was kind of an interesting thing to come across following the book, where I thought they were going to do the Peter Palmer thing.
Is this like a David Bruce Banner situation? They could just retroactively save themselves?
Yeah, know? It was his middle name. Sometimes he goes by Norman. And it's funny because I felt like the character acted very Jokerish at the same time. Some of the lines he said, he's throwing out these one-liners and everything. So it's very Jokerish. And you find out that the Green Goblin possesses one of these souls. So the souls are like either very good or very evil. And of course, he was one of the evil ones. So they're both after him. Night Spectre is after him because he's actually the last soul that he needs to collect. And of course, Speed Demon is after him because he wants to stop Night Spectre from having collected all of them, which tells me that obviously Speed Demon has failed. If they're on the last one and Night Spectre has gotten all of them. But I guess if you need all of them and even one time Speed Demon has defeated him, then I guess that would kind of more or less be the end of the story. They end up in this place where Night Spectre keeps all of the souls and everything, and they battle, and it's both of the Speed Demon characters joined together to defeat him, and they of course are victorious. They're able to put Iris's soul to rest and join forces as the whatever. They don't even say for sure what Wally's name is going to be in here, if he's still going to be called Speed Demon or what. He does mention that he could be Speed Demon's sidekick, like Sparrow is to Darkclaw. So they name drop those characters in there as well. There were some other guys that were used in here. They merged Plastic Man with Sandman to get Silicon Man. And there were a couple others, and I'm trying to remember now, of course, that I'm looking for these characters. I can't find them to show what it looked like.
They merge Man Thing with Swamp Thing and come up with Man Thing.
Swamp Man.
They did not actually do that. No.
Swamp Man with the hyphen.
Yeah, Swamp Man. Well, here's at least Silicon Man there.
Still got the awesome shirt though, the Sandman shirt. That's iconic.
Because him, Green Goblin, and Scarecrow had worked together. Scarecrow, I think, is supposed to be a mixture because in the DC versus Marvel book, there's a team up between DC's Scarecrow and Marvel's Scarecrow, because there is a villain named Scarecrow in Marvel as well, although lesser known than the Batman villain. So I think it was just they just merged the two and they still had Scarecrow. But Green Goblin, Scarecrow, and Silicon Man, who they would call Silly for short, had once been a team called the Terrible Three. I guess they didn't want to throw more characters in there and have some sort of Sinister Six type thing in there. Like we'll just stop at the three of them. We'll make it what goes with three, and well, terrible, close enough.
Even though Terrible Twos is usually what it is, so they just one up that. So
yeah, they ran up there. Of course, with mixing these characters, I mean, really, if you split them apart, it would be like 6 characters, anyways.
Ooh.
So, but yeah, it is hinted at in the end. Is Blaze Allen is kind of processing the events of the day. He kind of goes, wait, Etrigan's the demon I'm binded with, so who's the demon Wally's binded with? And then they show Night Spectre again at the top, kind of doing a Joker laugh. So they kind of threw some Joker elements in here a couple of times for being not a Batman related book at all. But it also wasn't a Spider-Man book, and they threw a number of Spider-Man type villains in there. So they didn't necessarily stick just to the characters that you would expect. They didn't have Flash villains, for example. They could have easily mixed Mr. Freeze and Captain Cold, or something like that. And granted, Mr. Freeze isn't a villain. They're both DC, but you know what I mean. They could have taken 2 and had at least one character that was a Ghost Rider villain, or one character that was a Flash villain, and they didn't really do that. They used other elements, kind of like in the CW shows where Arrow, they didn't use Green Arrow villains, they used mainly Batman villains. So similar to that in Speed Demon. And I will finish off by, of course, let's see, who was the creative team on this one? We've got the story by Howard Mackey and James Felder, art by Salvador LaRocca and Al Migram, Richard Starkings and Comicraft did the lettering, Kevin Tinsley colors, Malibu's Hughes for Seps, Bobby Chase was the editor, and Bob Harris as chief.
Cool. All right, Katie, what's next up for you?
All right, next I have Star Wars number 10. It is called Operation Starlight Part 2, the Rebel Code. All right, so about a year ago, we relaunched the main Star Wars line. It's taking place immediately after Empire Strikes Back. And this one is actually in the middle of the arc. So the heroic Rebel Alliance is on the run from the evil Galactic Empire. But the cunning Commander Jara has broken Rebel security codes and will stop at nothing to crush the rebellion once and for all. In response, the rebels stole an ancient protocol droid from the Imperial Museum. With it, they hope to create a new unbreakable code and bring the scattered fleet back together. It is written by Charles Soule. The artist is Jean Bazalda. Colorist is Rochelle Rosenberg, and the letterer is our buddy VC's Clayton Cowles. All right, so this book is actually in the middle of the arc. In the previous book, they sent a rebel strike team to Coruscant to go to the Imperial Museum and steal an ancient protocol droid who has obscure dead language in his head that only he has access to, and they want to create some new unbreakable communication codes. And in this arc, honestly, the reason I brought this book was because there was some really cool Lobot and Lando moments. So Lobot mostly just kind of stands around and looks cool in the movies, and in here we got to actually see him do something. As we know, he has a cybernetic implant on his head, and he is able to talk to this really old protocol droid and interact with them. And through him, Lando communicates that they're going to make a deal and trade information and protection for this droid's services. And I enjoyed seeing Lobot get to do something. I loved seeing more Lando in typical Lando fashion. He is a very charismatic gentleman, but is always looking for the next big score. And I liked that quite a bit. There was an interesting subplot of like what level of sentience and autonomy should a droid have. That was kind of cool to see, very interesting. And then there was a callback to a comic series from a few years ago that was just called Lando, and it was the Lando that we see around the time of Empire Strikes Back. And that was mentioned in this comic, and I really appreciated that because Marvel's building this really cool universe, and to see those sync up was really nice, and I like that quite a bit. Go read that Lando series if you haven't; it is very good. And then also we got to see Poe Dameron's parents in here, and I appreciate that. I thought that was actually pretty cool. People who played the Star Wars Squadrons game, I think, will appreciate kind of the second half of this comic because we get to see X-Wing pilots show up and always heroic. And also want to hype up Charles Soule. He put out a book last week that debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. It's #2 on Amazon. It's called Light of the Jedi. It's very good. It's the start of a brand new era. And I'm pumped to see Charles Soule, a fantastic comic writer, now make the jump to novels. So anyway, that's this week in Star Wars Comics news with Star Wars 2020 #10 by Soule, Bazaldua, and Rosenberg. I am so sorry to the artist. Let me try that again. Bazaldua. There, that's much better. Operation Starlight, the Rebel Code. Check it out.
Well, everybody knows you haven't made it in comics until your name has been butchered on this podcast.
That's absolutely correct. Of course.
Poe Dameron's dad.
Yep.
Is his name Paw Dameron?
Yes, it is. No, it's not. But I don't think they actually mention his name in the book.
Well,
his
now
mom's
it's Paw
name
Dameron.
is in the book, but not his father. Yes, it is. Good old Paw Dameron. Mon Paw Dameron.
Yeah.
Good question.
Madame Dameron, Madameron, if you will.
There we go. Coming soon from Marvel, just building on this universe. Incidentally, if you are interested in those two characters, they are in the Battlefront, the relaunch Battlefront 2015 storyline, and then also they feature very heavily in the Shattered Empire comic, which was put out leading up to The Force Awakens. So if you like those characters and like to see them in a starring role, you can go read that as well with Mon Paw Dameron.
Yeah, I remember, reading Shattered Empire and then seeing Force Awakens and then telling some of my movie-going friends and being like, oh, hey, by the way, this Poe Dameron, his parents worked with Han and Leia and everybody at the, after the Endor battle and stuff. They're like, what? And I'm like, where did they miss a scene? I'm like, it's in a comic book. Well, yeah, missed it.
Speaking of Han and Leia, I did forget one note that I wanted to bring up. There is a panel where it looks like Leia has 0 bones in her face, and that really weirded me out. I don't know a thing about art criticism, but just that the way they angled her face, I was like, Leia, where are your cheekbones? But yeah, always a fun time.
No bones about it, I guess.
No bones about it.
The next thing I'm going to talk about, the last thing of my weekly reviews, which is great that it kind of tied in with the MODOK, with him seeing a vision, if you will, of his own family that he didn't know he had. Well, here is the vision. This is by Tom King, Gabriel Hernandez Walta, Jordi Belair. There's help from Michael Walsh, as well as Clayton Cowles. Putting this book together as a 12-issue series from 2015, 2016, in that time frame there. What's cool about this, I've talked about in the past, especially as the issues were rolling out and when this hardcover edition came out, the family album edition, it looks, for anyone who's looking for it, this is the dust jacket for it, but I very much prefer this one, which has the cool like water stains, on there too. Um, and when I accidentally tip over my MODOK mug, it's on this. It doesn't matter because it just helps. It gives it more character. So this story here is basically about Vision of the Avengers, who is taking leave away from the Avengers, working in Washington D.C., and he's kind of working under the president, and he created a family for himself. They went to the suburbs, and he's got a wife, he's got a son, he's got a daughter, and they eventually get a dog. And the Visions are the new family that move in. And there's some people that are definitely very welcoming, and they know him as a superhero, which he'll remind you a couple times in this book that he had saved the world 37 times in a row, you would ask.
And only tried to take it over once.
Yeah. And maybe a second time. This series is mostly about his family, and as the issues go on, like you just jump right into it. Like his family characters don't exist prior to this comic, so any information that is given is handed out as the issues go on. So readers that have been reading Vision since the 60s or first time picking it up, they're going to be on the same page. It's very introductory for a first time reader. There are some elements that kind of dive into some Marvel back history, but it is kind of all explained in here. But the overall story, I think, is very enjoyable if you really know nothing beyond what they tell you here. And to kind of give you a first issue kickoff sell, this is something that's been out for years now, Eisner Award winner and stuff. So you've got there's a character named the Grim Reaper who comes in, a villain character in the Marvel Universe, often tied to Vision and Simon Williams, Wonder Man. And Grim Reaper comes in, and while Vision is out, he basically comes in and attacks the family. And Virginia Vision has to basically protect her family. And there's a very gruesome battle at the end of the issues. There are some possible casualties, as it basically sets the tone for Virginia, unlocking something deep within her programming that gets her to protect her family, and basically leads her to question where these memories come from, these things that she unlocks. That's all part of the story. Is how did Vision come to creating this family, this wife, these children, and that's all rooted in some very dark material here. Very deep writing, gorgeous art, just brilliant storytelling. It is a complete story with an open-ended, just kind of a let the reader guess what happens sort of way. But ultimately, you're going to feel very complete reading this series. Now, not only with this being one of my favorite things, but I bring it up particularly this week at the time of this recording, because yesterday, January 15th, we got the first 2 episodes of WandaVision, the first Marvel Studios series on Disney Plus. 9-episode series. We got 2 episodes so far. And while having read this story many times already and seeing the first 2 episodes, we were talking about this off air. This ain't going to be something, I'm not saying you have to read this and to understand WandaVision. It's definitely taking the essence of this, so the idea of family that is created within the WandaVision television show. I won't dive in too much if you're somebody that hasn't watched them yet or avoided trailers and such. But there are a couple pieces that are recommended reading if you're interested in the WandaVision. I talked about some of it last week with the Vision and Scarlet Witch miniseries. There are 2 of them, a 4-issue and a 12-issue from the early to mid 80s. And then House of M is another thing that I would recommend, as I think that was 8 issues, maybe 9. And then the 12-issue Vision run. If you kind of want material revolving around these characters and things that they're definitely going to be picking apart, playing homage to, putting their own spin on while and definitely creating their own thing on top of that. So this is just one of those ingredients in the WandaVision 7-layer cake. I don't know. And so this is definitely a great read. Once again, great for fans who have never dipped into Marvel Comics before. So if you are discovering this because you checked out WandaVision, this might be a cool thing to check out on its own. So yeah, beautiful collection. I think it's still readily available. Once again, this is The Vision by Tom King and Gabriel Hernandez Walta. All right. So that will complete my weekly reviews. David?
Okay, well, I guess for mine, I have one last book to talk about from Amalgam also, and that is Super Soldier #1. This is a modern day story. I'm not positive. I think the other book that I have featuring Super Soldier with a different title, I think might be like World War II era, kind of like they've done some of the stories with Captain America, where they'll set some World War II and then they'll have some that are modern day. After the JLA pulled him out of ice, which they do recount the story of how he was trapped under ice. So the backstory on Super Soldier here is much like Captain America, where they're trying to create a super soldier. But in this case, there had been a rocket ship in 1938 that crash lands somewhere in Kansas, and there were no survivors, but they were able to use some of the organic DNA that was saved from the wreckage and added to this super serum, a super soldier serum, and it was given to a volunteer whose name cannot be revealed. At least that's what it says in here, in sort of an introduction written by Jimmy Olsen, who in some ways takes the place of Bucky Barnes in at least the World War II section of it. He's like he's a photographer. He stumbles upon the super soldier's secret and kind of makes a deal that he gets to take pictures and follow and report on the super soldiers' stories and things like that, in exchange for not revealing the truth behind it. And so that's what he does. And because of that, his reporting, the whole world knows about the actions of Super Soldier and how he's beating the Nazis. That is until the rise of Ultra Metallo, which is this robot thing that Super Soldier has to battle. It's carrying these bombs, on its way to Washington, D.C. to destroy the Capitol. And so over the North Atlantic, Super Soldier has to fight it. And for some reason, he's not able to. And so the two of them plummet, fall into the ocean, and are never seen again. At least not for 50 years, when the JLA finds Super Soldier frozen in ice. One thing that was going on in World War II is a character by the name of Lex Luthor was developing these K-bombs, and that we were supposed to end the war. And that was being worked on at the same time. Don't really talk about exactly what happened with the K-bombs, if they were used instead of the bombs that were dropped in Japan, or what happened there. But we do find out what happened to Lex Luthor, as he had been exposed to the K radiation, and it prolongs his life, but turns him all green and uglier than he normally would be. And you find out that he's actually like the leader of Hydra. And it turns out that there had been a plot that he created the Ultra Metallo to stop Super Soldier because he's making money off the war, and he wanted the war to end on his terms when he was good and ready for it, so that he could exploit it and get rich and everything and become the savior, which he did get that reputation. And even to modern day, people thought that Lex Luthor was like this great guy. So he once again has a plot. After Super Soldier's been found and saved, Lex Luthor went back over and located Ultra Metallo, realizing that the rumors of its destruction had been greatly exaggerated. And that's another big part of the story here is Jimmy Olsen had actually witnessed Super Soldier being, killed, as they thought. But he was worried that morale would drop so drastically if it was reported that Super Soldier had been killed and unable to destroy this thing. So he decided to tell the world that Super Soldier destroyed this thing and saved the world. And I don't know what happened as far as stories afterwards, if he just stopped printing the stories and nobody questioned it. But he always regretted lying to the public. So here he gets a chance to be able to clear up that and kind of like make it right. But Lex Luthor is going to use this Ultra Metallo robot thing to go and finish what it started and destroy Washington, D.C. And that the fallout of this would cause basically the world to come crawling back to Lex Luthor to save them and, protect them from this new terrible thing. And it's revealed that the reason that Super Soldier failed to destroy it is because for some reason he was weakened. And ever since coming back, he's not been as strong as he was back then. So you find out that Lex Luthor, in a lot of his inventions and everything, has used that K radiation. And so Super Soldier discovers in fighting the robot again that he had been exposed to this K radiation. He tears into the robot, kind of opens it up, and then makes that connection that this green radiation from this meteorite that Lex Luthor has been using to power all of these inventions and everything is what's actually been sapping the strength and power from Super Soldier, and he's just pretty aggressively getting worse and worse. But there's so much of this technology that's like been used in the world that everything is just saturated in it. And that the story actually leaves off kind of with that. He still has that problem even after defeating and destroying the robot and beating Luthor. That it's great after 50 years I've defeated them, but there's so much of this radiation that has saturated the earth that I don't know what's going to happen to me. He grows weaker and weaker. So of course that is the story where you're like, well, what happens? Does he find a way to save himself? Is that actually the end? He stopped him and then he retires because he's getting weakened. We don't really know. We don't get to find out. All we know is that he saves the day and goes on to, fight again another day, maybe. This one, the creative team was... I gotta find it in here. I love it when comics hide all that stuff.
Either at the beginning or the end or 4 pages in or...
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of looking for, because sometimes they'll have it. They do have their fake letters page, mail call. And
in the meantime, the YouTube audience will see the French fry teddy bears dancing in front of the screen.
Oh, here we go. Because I knew that it was in here. I knew that I had seen it, because the script, co-plot, art, and lettering is all done by Mark Waid and Dave Gibbons of Watchmen fame. Angus McKee. His colors, Mike McCavany and Casey Carlson were the editors. So this I really enjoyed also. You know, I'm a huge Superman fan. I love Captain America. So this and seeing this mashup was great. I definitely would have loved to have read more of these adventures. And it's also done. Dave Gibbons had worked not only on Watchmen but in some Superman stuff that I really enjoyed too over the years. So it was great to see that artwork used in a book like this, and it was just done in a way that I really enjoyed. So maybe sometime, you know, they'll come back and revisit it. I am definitely looking forward to reading more. Like I said, I do know that Super Soldier has another book, and I cannot remember the title of that one, but that's probably going to be either next week or the week after, where I'll get a chance to review that.
They're called Captain Man.
Yes, Captain Man.
Super Captain Man.
That's
Super America.
Yeah. You can also get gas there.
Super America.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Sometimes character might have gas if he got something from that gas station that didn't sit right with him.
Well, who knows how this K radiation is affecting him? Like, give him some
There's definitely going to be
gas.
gas effects, yeah. All right, that was a great
And
way
that's all I've got.
end the review. We got one more in our weekly reviews. Katie, take it home.
All right. This week I have Conan, Red Sonja. It's from 2015. It's a team up. Oh, another team up book between Dynamite and Dark Horse. Now, Conan and Red Sonja were both created by the same author, and they have teamed up together many times throughout the years. But in this book, it is a mad bid for power by the evil sorcerer Thoth Amon has unleashed the Bloodroot, a pestilence as virulent as it is deadly, corrupting everything it touches. Only the world's most legendary warriors can save the world from a fate of horror and ruin. It is by Gail Simone, Jim Zub, Sam Panosian, Randy Green, Rick Ketchum, and Dave Stewart. Okay, so this book is a nice action adventure story with some plot, and it is actually a pretty interesting plot. Conan and Red Sonja both decide to take out a spoiled despotic ruler, and in doing so, they think they're going to get this amazing treasure. Well, the treasure actually turns out to be a plague that could destroy the whole world if it got out. We have some experience with that now. And as usual, they have to fight their way out and hack and slash. And they end up coming across this evil Amon who wants to release this plague because he is a bad guy. What else? So they fight together. They have a respect and a connection for each other, and then they go their separate ways. And because this is a storybook, they will later meet up several times and eventually fight Thoth Amon and prevent Bloodroot from being unleashed upon the world. It's a really great adventure story. There's a lot of fighting, so if you like action and you like sword and sorcery versus high fantasy, you'll really enjoy this book. A lot of blood and guts, swords and clubs. Conan fistfights people at some times. Neither one of them wears a whole lot of clothes, so that could be plus or minus your enjoyment for this book. We get to see a little bit of Conan and his pirate queen, Baylit, who appears in other stories. This is actually really fun. I liked this quite a bit. I have read a few Conan stories and a few Red Sonja stories. I can't claim to be an expert on the character beyond like what I looked up on Wikipedia, but I really enjoyed this. Like a lot of Conan Red Sonja stories, they're very episodic. So even though there's, well over 75 years worth of stories for these characters in one way or another, you don't have to have read them to enjoy this book if you want to pick it up and read it. I was pleasantly surprised that there was actually a plot to this story that connected, so that was quite nice. And I actually really liked this. I would read more Conan Red Sonja. I I know Red Sonja is kind of divisive among critics because some people are like, she's a strong, empowered female, and other people are like, dude, she runs around in chainmail bikini. I found her to lead more to the strong, empowered individual who makes her own choices and doesn't live by anyone else's rules. And the fact that she chooses to wear a bikini is just kind of part of her character. So take that for what it's worth if you are interested in scholarly and social justice work on comic books. Or if you just want to read a comic book, you can do that. Anyway, I enjoyed it. I got this at the Purge rummage sale. So Conan Red Sonja from 2015 by a team of creators coming together from Dynamite and Dark Horse. Check it out.
Excellent. All right, that will do it for the weekly reviews, but we've got a couple more segments, so let's get to letters page next.
Okay.
I'll repeat the question and then I'll go first. We are recording audio. All right. Welcome to the letters page. This week's question is, if you had to host a dinner party for 3 fictional characters as guests, who would you invite? My goal for this dinner party was to get things very awkward. So I'm going to kick it off with Vision. Vision is going to be my first guest, and the next 2 guests are going to realize why it's going to get awkward really quick. My second guest will be Simon Williams' Wonder Man, which Vision wouldn't be a character if his brain patterns weren't that of Simon Williams. So Wonder Man's brain patterns were used when Ultron created Vision. So I think that's going to create a little rift, especially if in this scenario, if I'm married to the Scarlet Witch, she's already at the dinner table. That's just a given. She's not one of my 3 guests because she's already there. And then the third guest, which might be a little curveball. There's probably a couple guesses, but I'm going to go back to the late 30s and bring the original Human Torch, which is Jim Hammond. And he is the android Human Torch that basically is the body that was used to create Vision. So the unused dead body of android Human Torch Jim Hammond mixed with the then deceased Simon Williams brain patterns created the Vision. So if you have all 3 of those entities there, forced to sit down and enjoy a meal with Scarlet Witch at my side, and wait, oh, doorbell just rang, an uninvited guest just popped up. It's Johnny Storm, the current Human Torch. That's just a whole crazy dinner party. And I think that's going to be very interesting, and it's worthy of a pay-per-view subscription. So those are my my dinner party guests. Damon, anything from you there?
Oh yes. I had to approach this very safely, so I am gonna split this up into 2 categories: me as I am today, married, and me as I was at 24, single. Okay, so me as I'm single, I would invite Hell Witch, Lady Death, and Vampirella, and as a backup, Red Sonja. I don't believe I need to explain why I would invite those characters. I'll just leave it at that. Catch me on Under the Cowl if you want further details. But seeing as how I am now in my 40s and I'm married, the 3 that came to mind that I think would be the most fun would be, of course, Howard the Duck, because he's a sarcastic ass like me. Golden Gal from the Black Hammer series, because again, she's just like me. And I think I'd have to go with Hellboy, because I gotta be honest, Hellboy from the movies, because the Hellboy from the comics is slightly different. So I'd want the Hellboy from the movies, just because I think it would be fun, as it would be awesome to sit at a bar and have a drink with Howard the Duck on one side and Hellboy on the other.
That's some fan art right there.
Yeah,
and then
that'd be great.
We'd get into a lot of trouble, have a lot of fun, and we'd all be looking out the window making fun of Golden Gal because she can't come in. Because even though she's older than all of us, she's trapped in the body of, what was it, a 12-year-old or 6-year-old. So she'd be flipping us off while we're all like, hey, cheers. And so I think that'd be a fun party.
I can picture that whole thing as an awesome fan art thing. So
Yeah. Well,
And with
two of them
Hellboy
are
to
owned
my
by
one
Dark.
side, and with Hellboy to my one side, I'd actually look thinner. So hey,
Yeah. Well, and two of those characters are owned by Dark Horse, so that could actually happen.
but you'd also have to be comfortable with the fact that your hands would look really small next to him too. So
I'm okay with that.
okay. Well, that's an interesting lineup, and once again, in great Damon fashion of breaking it down into those separate multiverse categories there. So, like you said, you played it safe, and that is smart. So, all right, David, you've got 3 dinner party guests. Who are they going to be?
All right. Well, what's funny is as we were preparing for this and that question was posted in our group, I had also listed the comics that I was reading, which the name of each comic is just the name of the character. So it's not like, the adventures of Super Soldier or whatever. So when I listed those 3 titles, it also looked like I was listing 3 characters. So I had to make it clear which question I was answering of yours when you were talking about what you're bringing to review, and also which 3 characters. Man, of course, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I actually would like to sit down at a table with these 3 characters, because you're really getting this blend of all these other characters, but getting them with 3. So yeah, I mean, it would be interesting, I think, to sit down to dinner with Super Soldier, Spider-Boy, and Speed Demon. Of course, Speed Demon might get a little annoying because, like Etrigan, the demon, he does speak in rhymes. I think part of the interesting thing about it would be trying to get him to say something where it's like she's trying to trip him up and getting him to speak in something that he couldn't find a rhyme for. Like if you could talk about an orange or something, and just being able to do something, and just that constantly just trying to give him something else to talk about to make him think of a rhyme. Because I don't know if this comes natural or if he just really has to think about what he's saying to speak in rhymes. And just listening to them talk about it, and you could bring up the subject of them being from this mixed universe, and how do they feel about the universe being separated, to save the 2 universes, which would end their universe, although they would be, split back into their different people. And how do they feel about sacrificing their universe to save these other 2 universes, and just really getting to know these characters, because you can't get to know them through the comics when there's only like 1, maybe 2 issues, that use each of these characters. So the more I thought about it, the more I thought, maybe I should just pick these 3 characters. And I think that actually would be a very interesting dinner conversation to have those 3 characters. So I left it at that.
Excellently done. Katie.
All right. So I am very excited about this question. I am going to invite Gandalf the Grey, Obi-Wan Kenobi, played by Alec Guinness, and Merlin from the Arthurian Legends. Well, number one, I'm going to invite them because I would be so starstruck and so amazed and honored that I would get to see these characters that have had such an influence on my life and my career, that I think it would put me right back to being 10 years old. And that would be just very, very special, I feel like. I'd probably be so amazed. I'd be a bad hostess, but that would just be great. And then the analysis reason I want to do it is because Obi-Wan Kenobi was inspired in part by Gandalf, who is very similar to the Merlin we see from different Arthurian legends, who is himself actually an amalgamation of characters from earlier.
cut out there?
I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah. Gandalf was knocking on the door, and I had to let Gandalf in because I can't keep him waiting because he gets mad. So that would be really cool to see all these characters that have many different reflecting elements of one another together. I think it would be really cool because they could probably do some amazing like magic, and that would be so exciting. That would be really nice to see what they could come up with, and they'd be sharing all this great wisdom with me and these lines that are so iconic, and you're like, wow, that can apply to so much. And then also at the same time, you're like, are you sure you're not just like a crazy old guy who's just saying really funny stuff? So that would be great. I'd get some good life advice, and I'd get to watch some magic. And then also finally, because I think it would be hilarious to watch like these three old guys with gray hair and long beards and stuff argue with each other and be stereotypical grumpy old men. And that would be really funny. And I'd try to split them up and calm them down. And I can just imagine the glares, and Gandalf's like, fool of a took. And then I'm just immediately shook and I have to sit down. They've all got some pretty sweet robes, so there's that. And then they could have a beard competition of who's got the coolest looking beard and who's got the most old hermit guy looking hut. Anyway, I really love those characters. So I'm inviting Gandalf the Grey, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Merlin.
Plus, if
Just gonna be great, crazy old Ben and the grumpy old men. Yeah.
Oh my God! Yes, that's right.
plus, when they're sitting down to eat and kind of passing around dishes and everything, and Gandalf asks for the mashed potatoes, and he goes, "You shall pass the potatoes."
Oh, there we go. There we go. You shall pass.
That concludes my one reference to Lord of the Rings that I know. So,
and you did great, and thank you so much. I am very proud of you. Good job.
All right, we have one more answer because Kirby, who couldn't make it because he'll be listening to this, by the way. Apparently, sports is more important than comic books on this evening, so we will shame him in the right ways. But until then, he gave us an answer for this question. I didn't read it yet, so this will be some of the fun here. All right, he goes, let's see, his answer for the question is Elf, the Will Ferrell elf, Scooby-Doo, and you'll have to help me with this, Elwood P. Dowd. Who is that? Anyone know? Elwood P. Dowd, D-O-W-D. Who has an invisible friend, Harvey, by the way, who he assumes wouldn't count, so that's a bonus. Yeah, I honestly thought I would get somebody to be like, "Oh yeah, that's so and so," and that's why I didn't.
Familiar to me, and I can't place it.
But anyways, while we get that answer, basically three characters with a lot of imagination, very funny, interesting conversations to be had, and he will have to serve up a very interesting buffet, including items like build your own sandwich bar, cereal bar with lots of syrup, finger foods, Scooby snacks, and carrot sticks. Do we have an answer on who Elwood P. Dowd is? Is he a Green Bay Packers?
He's talking about and the invisible Harvey. That's Harvey the Rabbit. It's an old movie called Harvey, and Elwood P. Dowd was the character from that who was the one that could see Harvey the Rabbit, the giant invisible rabbit.
Wasn't it James Stewart?
Hence the carrot sticks.
And I think it sounded somewhat familiar. I've never seen the movie, but I can recall my parents talking about it.
All right, so yeah, that's the answer there. And yeah, so that was a pretty fun question for all of us to attack there. And that will do it for the letters page. We're going to move on to the news. Okay, recording audio. This will be the previews, the indie previews. Damon and Katie, do you have some picks, I assume?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and then David, you recommend the whole catalog?
Yeah. buy
that
one
again,
of
David?
everything. Same thing goes. If I find somebody that is in fact going to buy one of everything, I will contact Diamond. I will, get them to reopen the account just so that I can order one of everything. Must have payment in advance though.
Yes.
Yeah, and watch how they bend you over to Coles there on the shipping charges for that one.
Yeah, I can
That's
imagine.
Each item will come in a separate box.
Yeah.
Damaged.
And you did have stuff, Damon?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Welcome to part 2 of our previews preview, which is check back for last week for Marvel and DC picks for items coming out in March 2021 and beyond. But we are jumping into the giant previews catalog for independent publishers, merchandise, collectibles, apparel, and all that kind of stuff. All the stuff you want to pre-order over at your wherever you get your comics. Mine is going to be first one here on page 42 from Image Comics, Shadecraft, issue number 1, written by Joe Henderson, art by Lee Garbett and Antonio Fabella. Zadie Lou is afraid of her own shadow. She's a teenager, so she really should have grown out of it by now, right? But something weird is happening in her small town. Zadie could swear the shadows are coming to life, watching her, trying to kill her. But how do you fight something you can't even touch? And how does all of this tie into her family of all things? Yeah, I'm always drawing attention to image number 1s or just any of the publishers really, and they have a couple pages of sample art. And I'm like, okay, I'm digging it. But once I went through the creators, I'm like, yep, I know where I know those names from. From the Eisner-nominated Skyward writer Joe Henderson and the artist Lee Garbett. Skyward's a book that I talked about, was my favorite book of the year that it came out. It was maybe like 2 years ago, I think it was. So when I saw this creative team on here, I'm like, yep, I highly enjoyed Skyward, so I'm definitely getting Shadecraft issue number 1 from Image Comics. Damon.
My first pick is also from Image. It is on page 36, my bad. And it is Noctera number 1. This was also on Kickstarter not too long ago. That's what the cover looks like.
Oh, yeah.
It says, 10 years after the world is plunged into an everlasting night that turns all living creatures into monstrous shades, the only way to survive is to stay close to artificial light. Enter Valentina, or Val, Riggs, a skilled ferryman who transports people and goods along deadly, unlit roads with her heavily illuminated 18-wheeler. This was a no-brainer for me. As a former truck driver and a horror fan, you can't go wrong combining both into one package. It's also written by Scott Snyder, who is one of my favorite writers in comics so far. He's done Batman, he's done Swamp Thing, Witches, and most recently Undiscovered Country, which is a favorite of mine. So this was a no-brainer. If you're interested, there's 5-page sample of the finished comic book. I was all in on this. The Kickstarter gave you the opportunity to get the first issue mixed with the script. So on one page would be the script, and on the right page would be the page of the comic that goes with that. And you could flip through and see how it was done. And they kept it in black and white so you could really see the detail. And so I even got that, the Kickstarter on that. And I want this one because it's colorized and it's the first number 1. And I thought it'd be great. It looks good, and it sounds like it'll be a fun series.
Oh, cool.
That's number 1 pick.
All right, Katie.
All right, so from Image Comics, I have a familiar title. It is Inkblot, trade paperback by Emma Kuber and Rusty Glad. Listeners will know we've been reading this for the past few months, and I love it. I've been getting it digitally, and I think it would be wonderful to get a print copy of this book because it's really an art book, like gorgeous full-page spreads, a lot of wonderful, great colors in it, and digital is great for the immediacy, but it can't compare to seeing great art on page. And I think that'd be really fun. I think it's like $10, so price to sell. I've been following Emma on Instagram, and she's a ton of fun. So I'm excited for Inkblot trade paperback from Image Comics.
Excellent choice. we have Kick-Ass versus Hit Girl, issue number 5 of 5. I talked about the beginning of this a couple weeks ago, but this is the final issue. And the reason I'm actually bringing it up, not so much for the story, but for a variant cover. Now, why would I do that? Well, I will tell you the very special story behind this one. Cover C is done by Emily Brooks Miller, who is the daughter that was the inspiration from Mark Miller, who created Mindy, Hit Girl. Not because, his daughter was a murderous young girl who, shot people and sliced people's heads off and things like that.
No,
But,
that was just a coincidence.
Yeah, I know that just worked out. But I'm assuming mostly for the fact of, it's his eldest daughter. At that time, she would have been, very young, and just the idea of making a child superhero was the inspiration. And she's an artist in her own right. And it's kind of crazy that things have kind of come full circle here. Is that the original inspiration for Hit Girl is now old enough to create this cover and use her art for the Kick-Ass versus Hit Girl series. It is presented in one of the smaller pictures, so yeah, you can kind of see it down there. But just the idea that it's drawn and I assume colored and everything by Emily Brooks Miller. So that's a cool plug for that. All right, Damon.
My next pick is on page 146. It is from Dynamite, and it is Vampirella versus Purgatory. Purgatory is one of the old characters from Chaos Comics. That's one of the things that I'm always trying to find is the old Chaos Comic characters, like Evil Ernie, Purgatory, the old Lady Death, stuff like that. I don't have too much Purgatory, but this is a brand new #1, a fresh story. It's the unholy alliance you prayed would never happen. For countless generations, the fight between good and evil has been fought as much behind the scenes as in plain view. Unbeknownst to the world at large, one force has stood as a safeguard against the potential triumph of evil and the unleashing of the apocalypse, the 36. Now, someone is after them, a creature of evil known as Purgatory, and the only thing standing in her way is Vampirella. So with all existence hanging in the balance, what could possibly bring these two enemies to join forces? Hint, whatever it is, it must be really bad. And in traditional Dynamite fashion, there's like a plethora of covers to pick from on their #1s. They always go overboard with the collectors, but it sounds like fun. It will be a fresh series for me to start with Purgatory, so I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. Katie.
All right, my next pick is again from Image Comic. It is Monstress, trade paperback, volume 5. Favorite series of mine. It has actually been on break for quite a while, so I'm really glad to see this is out. It's by Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda. Again, another great book for artwork. It's so pretty. The long-dreaded war between the Federation and Arcanus is about to explode. Micah must choose her next steps. Will she help her friends or strike out on her own? It is $17, collects Monstress 25 through 30, and is available on February 10th. Monstress Volume 5, Image Comics.
Cool. Over at IDW, we've got the last of the best of, at least of the main Turtles, for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Best of Michelangelo. I think the Leonardo one just came out or is coming out in the next week or so. But these are cool collections, $5.99 for 100 pages of comics and basically highlighting tales throughout the decades. I think they've all taken a story from the original Eastman and Laird Ninja Turtle comics and then grabbing something, a couple things modern as well and from the micro series and things like that. But they are really cool collections, not only with these awesome shiny covers, which I'm sure there's one laying around here somewhere, but I don't have it at the ready. But they got these cool shiny covers that are all designed. You won't see the shine on this paper here, but it seems like such a simple design, but they all look so cool. And I'm excited to have the last one here for Best of Michelangelo coming in March from IDW. Damon.
My last pick this week is from Dark Horse. It's on page 93, and I know nothing about it. So if anybody has read this series, you can jump in with your 2 cents. But seeing as how I love to collect hardcover and library editions, this caught my eye. It is called Ether. It is the library edition collecting the entire series. It's written by Matt Kent, and they describe it as interdimensional explorer Boone Diaz, a brilliant scientist from Earth, enters the magical world of ether and stumbles onto a great responsibility that takes him through the center of volcanoes, deserts full of living mummies and sphinxes, and a bizarre fairy forest, all leading towards a final climatic battle for the fate of both worlds. This will collect every issue of Ether and Deluxe Oversized Hardcover Edition, along with every cover and all published bonus content. So it's right up my alley. That's all I know. I'm probably going to go in blind so I don't ruin anything. But if anybody's read it, I'd love to know if it's worth getting or if I should stay away from it. But either way, that's my last pick.
I haven't read it, but that's a Matt Kent strong choice, and I've heard nothing but good things. It definitely is an acclaimed book, and I haven't read it. I just know that other people really do enjoy it. So. And there's probably a reason they got this collection coming out then. Good. Katie, did you say you had another one, or was that it?
Yes, I have one more. This will be my last pick. Still from Image Comics, Rat Queens, Volume 8. Rat Queens is a series that Jim actually put me onto. I've been reading along in trade paperbacks, and again, the series took a long break. It's back with a new creative team. So I'm excited to read some more Rat Queens in trade paperback Volume 8 called The God Dilemma.
Cool. All right, and my last pick over at Boom is Firefly Brand New Verse number 1 of 6. This is set 20 years after the events of Firefly. Serenity soars the verse once again with a new captain. And if you're still like behind in reading, or you've always meant to read it, and whatever, I will censor the rest of what they're about to say. But it is the offspring of some of the characters, so we'll just leave it at that. But this is set in a 20-year future, and I'm excited to kind of see what's going on. And really where I haven't read too much about this just because I don't need a sell beyond Firefly, but I like the idea of jumping into a future story like this. This is written by Josh Lee Gordon, art by Fabiana Mascalo, and a bunch of cool covers there that good chance I will be trying. I see there's a lot of incentive ones written on there, so those ones might not be too easy to get, but this is one of those that I'm super excited and dive into a different version of the Firefly universe, told 20 years in the future. Firefly, Brand New Verse, number 1. All right, and I think that was it for everybody, if I'm not mistaken.
It is, but I do want to take this time to just point out that for anybody who's not ordering anything from the previous catalog or whatever, that doesn't mean that you can't read some great comments, some comics, or comments about comics. Like I've been sticking exclusively to the back issues, and that is a great way to just kind of travel through time and read some of the great comics that have been put out over the years. And looking for back issues, you don't have to find the most expensive back issues. There are a lot of great things that you can find very inexpensively. Some of the higher price stuff you can find in trade paperback and whatever, which you should be able to order from your local comic book stores or online. There's a number of sources to get those, but dive into those back issue boxes and find some great stories. There are some just, there's amazing artwork to look at. There's just some fantastic stories out there that have been given to us over the years. And even if you've read some of the stuff, it's always wonderful to just go back and revisit them like I've been doing. And, I love that just as much as picking up the new books and reading through those. So give the back issues a shot.
Excellent. All right, that will do it for the news segment here. We have one final segment, and we have to unlock and open up the pocket dimension. Hold for effects. Save. Re-record audio.
And here's those visual effects.
Okay, here we go. Okay, welcome to the Pocket Dimension, everybody. It's our show and tell segment. 2021, I decided I wanted to concentrate on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the year of the turtles, if you will. I don't know if that's an accurate thing, but at least in this household it is. With me and Damon have talked about Ninja Turtles last year, and him getting the IDW collections, and me wanting to dive into the ultimate editions of the Eastman and Laird comics. And I have been acquiring those original issues, so I've started to dive into the original 80s comics. I got this cool documentary called Turtle Power, which I highly recommend, even if you just, aren't just a Uber Turtles fan. Is such an interesting story how just such a simple sketch of a Ninja Turtle amongst two friends, just kind of, passing time at night and throwing the sketch over onto the other guy's desk and being like, "What's this?" "Oh, this is a Ninja Turtle." And you're like, "What? That's stupid." And then the other guy draws one, he passes it back, and then the other guy's just like, "Well, I have to top this. I'm going to draw four of them." And the fact that within 3 years, having a successful independent comic book, having the toy line, the animated series, and prepping for a movie all within that 5 years then was just crazy. So I'm going through all the comics, and also I'm going to be revisiting the original cartoon, which I love so much. So you're wondering, why am I got to go to David's screen to see what he just held up there. He just held something up. Oh, there we go.
You got newer stuff, you got older stuff. There's a huge amount of back catalog for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to visit or revisit.
Yeah, there's a ton there. So you're wondering what I'm doing for the show and tell portion. Well, kind of hanging out and watching the movies in the background, which I just know by heart anyways. I decided to get out the old sketchbook, and inspired from the first movie, when we see April and Neil, they're all hanging out at the farmhouse, and they are she's kind of hanging out and she's drawing some of the Ninja Turtles. So I decided to basically recreate that sketch, and just by looking at the one that's presented in the movie, in about an hour I whipped this up of Leonardo sitting there resting on the chairs. He's worried about Raph, and this is when Splinter was kidnapped, and they're all kind of hiding out and stuff. So yeah, I pulled that off, and I was very happy with the results there. And I didn't take too much of my own take on it. I just kind of messed around with the background a little. Didn't get too accurate on there, but I really wanted to try to capture all of the different shades and colors, and even the notes on here were writing Leo on there, which might be harder to see on the YouTube thing here. And then on the original sketch, they wrote bathroom, arrow pointing to the bathroom door, and blue for a background that's kind of scribbled on there. So, yep, that is a little Leonardo sketch that I whipped up the other day. And by the other day, I mean last night. All right, so that is my...
That's good.
That's actually really good. I know the movie well. I know the scene. I just saw the movie not too long ago, and that looks pretty spot on. That's really good.
Yeah, thank you. I sent the original to my friend Erica, who's also a big Turtles fan, and she knew that well. Mm-hmm. And then an hour later, I sent my version, and she had to double check because she saw my signature on there, but she's like, "Oh, he's just messing around. He just put his signature on the original one." And then she scrolled back, and she's like, "Oh wait, no, that's..." So it was kind of cool. I took that as a high compliment that she thought that was the real one for a second. But I'll post that within the club there too for anybody that from the club that is listening. Yeah.
Very cool.
Damon, do you have anything to share?
Sure. Well, we only go around once, right?
You can do whatever you want.
I'll save the stuff I talked about that's over my computer for another time.
Okay.
Today I'll talk about my package that came in today. I was very excited for. This is a story I always wanted to get into. wanted to check out because I heard nothing but good things about it. There's also 2 movies made on this franchise. And I originally ordered it back in August. My website, I can usually get things for 42% off from the one website I shop at. But I went to order this back, I think, in end of March, early April. But thanks to COVID, there was like a buy-in frenzy. Everyone was afraid of missing out, books not getting restocked. And so unfortunately, when I ordered this, my order was canceled because they had sold out. And it was out of print and was going for an obscene amount of money in the secondhand market. I don't know how, but recently Amazon was able to either get a shipment in or something, but they had it back in stock for just under cover price. And so I didn't think twice and I snatched it. And it is big damn Sin City. And when I say big, it is big.
Ooh,
This is
chunky.
like 1,500 pages. To give you guys an idea, my saga, which has just happened to be sitting here, this is the size of a traditional oversized hardcover or a regular omnibus. To give you an idea of how big this thing is,
Oh my goodness.
taller and wider than a traditional omnibus. And it's a good 15 pounds easy.
Oh my.
They had to ship it in 2 boxes, which I'm glad they did. But it contains all 7 stories in beautiful, oversized form. I just got to find a page that's safe to show because this is an adult series. You know, it's like crime and, well, to be honest, I don't really even know. I haven't seen the movies. I didn't want to read too much into it because I wanted to go into this blind. But here's a nice, it is black and white except for the cover pages. But here, nice glossy paper with the one cover for the Yellow Bastard. It does come with a red ribbon bookmark. Here's like, I think this is safe. Card chase. It's hard to hold up, so I'm done with the show and tell. But yeah, it's a awesome book. If you don't have it and you do want to add this to the collection, I suggest getting it while you can from Amazon because when these are gone, they're going to be gone.
But reading that's going to be like a new exercise regimen for you. Like,
yeah.
Some heavy reading.
Yeah. No pun intended there.
No, the puns are
very nice.
Always intended.
Yeah.
David, anything from your side there?
No.
Okay.
Nothing
And
to
I wasn't. Oh, that's in the pocket dimension. Katie.
So it's a Lord of the Rings type of day, I guess. I am going to show off some original artwork, and first I'm going to show you the inspiration. All right. I was hoping that the rear camera would work on this. I'm not sure if it will. All right. What I'm holding up is a brooch. It's a pin, and Lord of the Rings fans will recognize this design from movie. It was given to the Fellowship in Lothlorien for their cloaks, and I have a replica pin. I'll tell the story of the jewelry another time because there is a really good story, but I want to show the artwork. It's very special to me. So my cousin Alex does art as a hobby, and she gave this to me for my birthday a few years ago. It is a
I think your videos froze up.
Yeah, right now I see a gray screen. I don't know. Are we seeing gray?
No.
Oh, I can actually see Katie, but the images froze. So it's just
So yeah, not that you get too deep into it yet.
Okay. Let me.
So it might just be a tell and not a show.
Oh, that's fine. I'm used to doing that anyway. We'll turn off the video and try again. 5G, folks, coming soon to you. All right. Anyway, what I wanted to show is this gorgeous original one-of-a-kind artwork that my cousin gave to me. She is an artist, and it is inspired by the brooch that I was showing. It is a pen and ink and watercolor painting of that brooch. So it's all green and blue on top of a gray and black background with a gradient. And she put a quote on it that said, "Even darkness must pass, a new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer," attributed to Samwise Gamgee. That is from the end of The Two Towers, where Sam gives a very passionate and heartfelt speech about the state of the world and why are we here. And it's very good. Even if you aren't interested in the movie, I think it says a lot about our society. And I pull it up and listen to it when things get really hard. Anyway, this artwork is extremely special to me because it was a birthday gift given to me by someone who I love very much. And it was unexpected that she would give me this amazing piece. And sometimes the best gifts are the ones that you didn't know that you wanted until you got them. So I'm extremely proud to own this. It's on my shelf, a big part of my Lord of the Rings collection. And I love it very much. And I feel loved when I look at it. So, you know, things are very bad right now, but I would remind you that a new day will come. And when the sun shines, it will shine out all the clearer. So that is my tell. We'll try and work on showing. But yeah, that's what I have. And then, of course, the brooch that inspired it. So there we go.
Sounds good. It's time to close up the pocket dimension. And it's closed. All right. That is a great issue of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club. In the coming weeks, once again, as a reminder, we'll be talking about issue 5 of Inkblot, issue 3 of Crossover, and issue 8, the finale of the Batman adventures continue. Depending on shipping and when everybody gets those books, that's all up in the air. So we will talk about that and talk about them within the next month here. And I think that should do it for this issue of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club podcast. This entire time, I haven't been a square. I'm as round as they come.
I've just been sitting here working out.
I've been rolling 20s in O&O.
And I'm eating dinner with Gandalf.
To be continued.